One of the most common jobs around the house that people are actually willing to do is painting. But people are usually put off by glasswork, and I totally understand why. But to be honest with you, with all the new water-based paints, I don't think it's that much of a deal. The most important thing about any glasswork is preparation and brush control. So stick around and I'm going to show you some tips. Now there are a few things that you need to have on you, which are quite important. So come along and I'll show you. Always have some sandpaper in your pocket, a little scraper, a Stanley knife, and always carry either a wet wipe or cloth with you. And try and keep it nice and clean, so stick it in your pocket or somewhere where it's not going to get full of dust. Brushes. Now this is going to be a bit of a interesting one because everybody's got their own preference. This is a 50mm brush and it's slightly tapered on the edge there, if you can see. The thing about brushes is the more you use them, the better they tend to be, because you work them in. It's called working the brushing. So your cutting brush, if you've got a fairly new one, it's always a headache until you work it in nicely. And I always keep another little brush with me, a clean one, so that I can just brush the corners, any dust that's on the surface or anything like that. Because when everything is nice and prepared and you've got brush control, things become much easier and you soon pick up a few different techniques on how to use your brush, how to get into the corners. But the main thing is a steady hand. That I must say, you do need a steady hand. And as much as people tell you to go slow and carefully, I tend to disagree, because speed is what helps you control the brush. Without speed, you tend to shake too much. So the slower you're trying to go, the more you're gonna jiggle about, and the less straight your line is gonna be. I just tend to get all the bits, like the top and the grooves, and then I'll go over everything with a roller before it dries. The corners are quite simple. You just feed the brush into the corner. So you're not coming from the top, you're coming from the front and you're feeding it in like that. I'll show you some more techniques as we go along. And before your paint dries, just load your roller and take all the excess off. And just slightly go over your skirting board, over that paint. So you load your brush, and when you see it's running out, just flick it like that on the edge of the skirting board, and then your brushes will pick it up. Feed the tip of your brushes. Just remember that at this point you're just concentrating on that edge between the wall and the skirting board. You're not bothered if this section here gets missed, because you'll just flick it like that and just brush it over. The corners are the most tricky ones, and all the grooves, they can be quite tricky. But like I said in the beginning, preparation is the most important part. Especially when you caulk your corners and you get them nice and ready for you to paint. It just makes life much easier. And always do caulk your corners. But when it comes to caulking, less is more. Just remember that. Now when it comes to doing these little returns here, do be careful because your paint will drip. And the way to do it is just apply the paint in the groove and you'll see that the paint will load up a lot there. Or just work that paint up. So you're taking it from the little corner and you're working it upwards. Paint just tends to sort of gather in those corners. Just remember, you need to spread that paint. Always check your work. Make sure there's no drip marks. Make sure that you got all the bits covered that you needed to cover. Go over with a roller just to spread that paint and get those lines away. And if you make a mistake and get some paint on the wall, don't beat yourself over it. Just make sure you wipe it off straight away. And you can pretty much just continue to paint. One thing you need to consider is that mistakes will happen. And the only way to avoid them is to be prepared. Make sure you got all the equipment at hand, because it's easy to rectify the mistake while the paint is wet. Thanks a lot for joining. If you like what you see, consider subscribing for more tips and hacks.